In 1906, planners in Freeport, New York, mapped out an expansion for a neighborhood dirt road. A local property owner disagreed with their route, so he built a house, not next to the road, right in the path of it. He was exploiting an old legal loophole that prohibited the village from developing land if an occupied structure was already sitting on it. The town planners had no choice but to route the dirt path around his front door. A single stubborn homeowner can force a local village to redraw a map, but scaling that resistance up is a different story, especially when the road being built is a 45,000-mile ribbon of concrete. Constructing the US Interstate Highway System required the government to carve multi-lane corridors through mountain ranges, across deserts, and directly through the densely populated centers of major cities. Building it required a direct collision between a highly standardized, continent-spanning federal blueprint and the millions of individual property owners. The blueprint started in the mind of General Dwight D. Eisenhower. During World War II, he saw the wide open scale of the German Autobahn and realized the logistical value of moving troops and military supplies across a country at high speed. A decade later, the Cold War provided the political leverage needed to bring that concept to the United States. The 1956 Highway Act passed Congress largely because it was framed as a critical component of national defense. In a country where school children huddled on the floor for nuclear attack drills, the federal government argued that a wide, high-capacity road network was essential for the rapid mass evacuation of urban centers. To guarantee the project wouldn't stall out, Congress created the Highway Trust Fund. This pay-as-you-go system funneled revenue from a federal gas tax directly into road construction, creating an infinite loop of dedicated funding. That continuous stream of cash turned the master plan into heavy machinery. Entire neighborhoods were leveled by eminent domain to make way for massive overpasses, interchanges, and access ramps. Fueled by existential Cold War anxiety and backed by an endless budget, the Highway Department became a bureaucratic steamroller. For the local communities in its path, it looked impossible to stop. Engineers designed the system as a mathematical grid. Primary routes spanning the continent follow a strict numbering logic, odd numbers running north and south starting low on the west coast, and even numbers running east and west starting low in the south. When those main arteries hit urban areas, they spawn local bypasses and spurs. These are assigned 3 digits, combining the main route's number with an even prefix for a beltway that loops around the city, or an odd prefix for a spur that goes straight in. There's a persistent myth that 1 in every 5 miles of this system is perfectly straight to accommodate emergency airplane landings. It's entirely fiction. But the fact that people believe it proves how we naturally view the interstate system, as a strict, uncompromising, top-down schematic where mathematical efficiency overrides local geography. That mathematical perfection breaks down on the East Coast. For decades, the most important north-south artery in the country, Interstate 95, had a massive gap right between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. If you were driving from Florida to Maine, you had to exit the interstate, navigate a dead-end branch through Philadelphia, and take a completely different toll road, the New Jersey Turnpike, to keep going north. The engineers originally had a plan to connect it, but residents in central New Jersey organized. They protested, filed lawsuits, and leveraged environmental regulations to physically block the bulldozers from cutting through their towns. The highway planners assumed they would eventually win. They didn't. The standoff dragged out, forcing millions of drivers onto a permanent detour that lasted 62 years. A local community managed to completely sever the primary artery of the East Coast, proving that the federal grid could actually be stopped by local resistance. When the I-95 gap was finally closed in 2018, the federal government didn't force its original route through New Jersey. They compromised, rerouted the highway entirely, and built a new interchange to connect the existing roads. That compromise reflects a broader shift in urban planning. Cities across the country are now spending billions of dollars to actively erase the concrete trenches that were forced through their downtowns in the 1950s. This map highlights Boston's Central Artery, an elevated segment of Interstate 93 that originally cut the city's waterfront off from its commercial center. To fix it, Boston initiated the Big Dig. Engineers had to excavate a massive tunnel system directly beneath an active elevated highway without stopping the 190,000 vehicles driving over it every single day. The project took over a decade and cost roughly $22 billion. That price tag is a direct measure of how desperate Boston was to undo the damage of mid-century highway planning. It is a slow, expensive process, but it is spreading. In Syracuse, New York, portions of Interstate 81 are being rerouted and buried, leaving the surface level to be reclaimed by greenery and pedestrian streets. Eisenhower's 1956 vision was a monolithic, completed grid. The reality today is a heavily modified, fragmented patchwork. Over the last century, local pushback has evolved. It started with a single property owner building a house in the middle of a dirt road, and grew into municipalities orchestrating multi-billion-dollar highway burials. The Interstate Highway System is the largest public works project in American history, but it is not a finished engineering schematic. It is a continuous, living negotiation over who actually controls the land.